protection of learners' constitutional rights. The complaint was initiated by the Commission on its own accord in terms of its complaints handling procedures. These followed persistent complaints and reports received during the Commission's school monitoring activities across the Northwest Province. These complaints consistently raised serious concerns regarding scholar transport system. Reported challenges included the use of unroadworthy and unsafe vehicles, chronic overloading and multiple trip operations, and learners being delivered late to school or not transported at all. Further concerns related to the exclusion of eligible learners due to budgetary constraints, the lack of supervision of learners during transportation, and the failure to reasonably accommodate learners with disabilities. In addition, principals, parents, and other stakeholders reported intimidation when attempting to raise concerns about safety and reliability of scholar transport services. Taken together, these reports demonstrated that challenges were systemic in nature rather than isolated incidents, necessitating a comprehensive province-wide investigation by the Commission. In response to these concerns, the Commission undertook a comprehensive and multi-pronged investigative process. This included pre-inquiry correspondence with the Northwest Department of Education and the Department of Community Safety and Transport Management as the departments responsible for scholar transport program. These engagements revealed a lack of clarity regarding roles and responsibilities between the two departments. They further confirmed that thousands of eligible learners were not receiving scholar transport due to budgetary constraints, and that there were divergent explanations regarding accountability for persistent failures within the system. The investigation was further strengthened through extensive site inspection conducted at schools across all districts in the province. These inspections confirmed poor vehicle conditions, chronic overcrowding, frequent mechanical breakdowns, late arrival and collection of learners, and the abuse of adequate in-transit supervision. In addition, the Commission convened 3 formal sittings on the investigative inquiry, which were held between March and May 2025. During these sittings, evidence was received under oath from relevant government departments, parents, and civil society organizations, teachers' unions, transport operators, and oversight bodies, which included Chapter 9 institution, Auditor General reports. This evidence provided critical insight into the systemic nature, scale, and impact of scholar transport challenges under investigation. The inquiry process was supplemented by post-inquiry written submissions and a detailed analysis of relevant documents, policies, and the applicable legal framework. This enabled the Commission to fully assess the scope, causes, and human rights implications of the scholar transport challenges in the Northwest Province. Key findings. The Commission found persistent and systemic failures in the delivery and management of scholar transport program in Northwest Province, indicating deep-rooted governance, planning, and oversight weaknesses rather than isolated incidents. These systemic failures have resulted in thousands of qualifying learners being excluded from scholar transport despite meeting the eligibility criteria for the program. As a direct consequence, affected learners are compelled to 1. Walk long and often unsafe distance to and from school, exposing them to risks such as crime, road accidents, fatigue, and adverse weather conditions. 2. Arrive late for school on a regular basis, leading to missed instructional time, disrupted learning, and academic disadvantage. 3. Drop out of school entirely, particularly in rural and impoverished communities where families are unable to afford alternative transport arrangements. Safety and dignity. Scholar transport in the Northwest Province is characterized by serious safety and operational failures, including 1. Unroadworthy and unsafe vehicles, some of which have been described by affected communities and stakeholders as coffins due to severe mechanical defects, expired license disc, fuel leaks, and absence of basic safety features. 3. Chronic overloading of vehicles, often far exceeding approved passenger capacity, significantly increasing the risk of accidents and injuries. And the third one, frequent mechanical breakdowns, which leave learners stranded on roadsides, force them to walk long distance, or result in learners missing school entirely. In addition, learners are subjected to multiple trip operations due to insufficient vehicle capacity, resulting in excessively long travel times. This leads to learner fatigue, late arrival at school, early departures, and the disruption of teaching and learning, with particularly severe consequences for younger learners and those in rural areas. Protection and equality. There is a general lack of supervision of learners during transportation, with most vehicles operating without any adult supervision beyond the driver. This exposes learners, particularly younger children, to bullying, intimidation, and other forms of physical, emotional, and psychological harm whilst in transit. Learners with disabilities are not reasonably accommodated within the scholar transport system. Vehicles are often inaccessible, and service providers lack the capacity or the willingness to transport learners with disabilities, resulting in their effective exclusion from the program and unequal access to education. Scholar transport is generally unavailable for extra lessons, remedial programs, and academic support activities. As a result, learners who rely on scholar transport are unable to participate in additional learning opportunities, placing them at a disadvantage compared to their peers and further entrenching educational inequality. Governance and accountability. The Commission also found that the persistent and systemic failures in scholar transport program are directly attributable to institutional shortcomings within the Department of Community Safety and Transport and the Northwest Department of Education, as these departments are jointly responsible for the planning, implementation, and oversight of the program. The Northwest Provincial Treasury has also been found to be complacent through weak financial oversight, including failure to take effective measures to prevent misuse of public funds. This included payments exceeding 1 billion made to service providers for services that were not rendered. The Commission identified several root causes underpinning the failures, including weak oversight and enforcement mechanism resulting in non-compliant service providers operating without consequences, corruption and procurement irregularities, including misrepresentation by service providers and failures in contract management, budgetary constraints and payment failures, including delayed or non-payment of service providers which directly undermine service delivery and safety compliance, policy gaps and role confusion, particularly the lack of clarity regarding responsibilities between the two departments, leading to fragmented accountability and ineffective coordination. Human rights violation. The Commission further found that systemic failures in scholar transport program constitute violations of learners' constitutional rights, including the right to basic education, as learners are unable to access schooling in a safe, reliable, and consistent manner. The right to equality and human dignity, where learners are subjected to unsafe, undignified, and unequal transport conditions. The right to safety and security of persons, given the exposure of learners to unsafe vehicles, overloading, and lack of supervision. The right to protection from neglect, abuse, and degradation, particularly where learners are transported in hazardous conditions or left stranded without adequate support. The Commission further found that the impact of these failures falls disproportionately on poor and rural learners, as well as learners with disabilities, who often have no alternative means of transport. This unequal impact amounts to unfair discrimination, as enshrined in Section 10 of the Constitution, deepening existing inequalities and entrenching vulnerability among already marginalized groups, particularly our learners. The directives. Within 60 days, the departments must do the following. The Commission directed COSATMA and Northwest Department of Education to jointly submit a comprehensive progress report detailing steps to address systemic failures identified in scholar transport program. The progress report must specifically account for the following: learners newly accommodated, indicating the number of learners who have since been provided with scholar transport, learners who remain excluded, together with clear reasons for their continued exclusion and interim measures in place. Vehicle roadworthiness testing, including number of vehicles tested, the ones that have failed the test and the ones that have been approved for the use of scholar transport. Vetting of drivers, confirming compliance with legal and safety requirements, breaches by service providers, identifying non-compliant operators and the nature of the breaches. Consequence management measures, including disciplinary or contractual action taken against officials and service providers. Outstanding payments to service providers with reasons for any non-payment or delays. measures implemented to reasonably accommodate learners with disabilities, including steps taken to ensure accessibility, safety, and inclusion. This report must demonstrate measurable progress, clear accountability, and concrete interventions aimed at restoring safe, reliable, and dignified scholar transport for all eligible learners. Within 90 days, again, this is a directive from the Commission to the departments to establish a functional complaints call center accessible to parents, learners, schools, and the public, with adequate safeguard to ensure anonymity and protection against victimization, as enabling the timely reporting of scholar transport related concerns. Clear all outstanding payment backlogs owed to service providers in order to stabilize service delivery, prevent service disruptions, and eliminate incentives for unsafe practices such as the use of unroadworthy vehicles and overloading. Ensure that eligible learners are provided with scholar transport, with immediate measures taken to close existing service gaps and prevent any learner from being denied access to education due to transport constraints. Clearly marked scholar transport vehicles, including the display of identification details and complaints contact information to enhance visibility, accountability, and ease of reporting by communities and schools. Implement a continuous learner identification system capable of regularly updating data on learners who require scholar transport to ensure accurate planning, equitable access, and timely accommodation of emerging transport needs. Within a period of 180 days, both departments once more are directed to the following: review and amend provincial learner transport policy, guidelines, and protocols to close identified policy gaps and strengthen the regulatory framework governing scholar transport in the province. The policy review and amendments must specifically address inclusive eligibility criteria, ensuring that learners in rural, peri-urban, and urban areas, as well as learners traveling long distance due to limited curriculum offerings, are fairly and consistently accommodated. Reasonable accommodation for learners with disabilities, including accessible vehicles, appropriate exemptions, clear obligations on service providers to ensure safe and dignified transport. Strengthened monitoring and enforcement mechanism to ensure regular inspections, effective oversight, and decisive action against non-compliant service providers. Enhanced driver vetting and safety standards, including compliance with professional driving permits, background checks, and ongoing safety training. And regulation of private scholar transport to ensure learner safety, accountability, alignment with minimum safety and operational standards across the entire scholar transport system in the province. All parties responsible are required to submit biannual progress reports to the Commission detailing the steps taken to implement the Commission's directives, the progress achieved, and any outstanding challenges requiring further intervention. The Commission will continue to actively monitor compliance with these directives and will not hesitate to take further appropriate action where responsible parties fail to give effect to the required remedial measures in order to ensure the effective protection and realization of learners' constitutional rights are realized. As I conclude, this inquiry confirms that scholar transport is not merely an administrative function. It is a constitutional obligation and a critical enabler of the right to basic education, as enshrined in Section 29 of the Constitution of our country. The failures identified in this inquiry have real and lasting consequences for learners, particularly the most vulnerable, the marginalized, persons with disabilities, our children that really needs protection. The Commission therefore expects decisive, coordinated, sustained action from all responsible parties to give effect to the directives issued and to ensure that each and every learner can have access to safe, reliable, roadworthy, dignified scholar transport. Thank you so much.
You've just listened there to the South African Human Rights Commission giving the findings of their investigation into the conditions under which pupils are being ferried around the Northwest Province using scholar transport. And let me tell you, it is a scathing report. The Commission has essentially found that thousands of pupils are not receiving scholar transport due to budgetary constraints. There is chronic overcrowding, poor conditions caused by persistent and systemic failures indicating deep-rooted problems. It's laid the blame squarely on the provincial government, saying that they are responsible for these failures because, of course, government is essentially the custodian of scholar transport through planning, implementation and oversight. And of course, the bombshell statement saying that these failures constitute human rights violations, including but not limited to the right to education, safety and security, and to protection from neglect and abuse. The Commission is then given a three-pronged recommendation or directive, if you like, giving the department essentially 3 deadlines. In 60 days, the department must submit their progress report to deal with these identified failures. In 90 days, they should establish functional complaint centers in order to ensure anonymity and to guard against victimization. They must also clear outstanding payment backlogs to service providers. And in 180 days, the government has been instructed to review and amend policy in order to close gaps and to improve the regulatory framework. Once again, a really scathing finding from the South African Human Rights Commission, essentially finding that the state of scholar transport in the Northwest constitutes a violation of human rights. It's an important story to watch for you because of the breaking news on your screen. You know, incidentally, in Gauteng, which is a different jurisdiction, we've learned of yet another scholar transport accident, this time 11 pupils at least having died. We're told 5 others are receiving urgent medical care after they were injured and are in a critical condition. The Education MEC in Matume Chulwane has shifted his diary and is now, we understand, at the accident scene itself in Vanderbijl Park, trying to, of course, ascertain the circumstances surrounding this particular tragedy. From where we're sitting, I can tell you there's so many more questions that remain unanswered about the state of scholar transport, and perhaps the report by the Human Rights Commission in the Northwest is giving us all but a glimpse of just how bad the situation may very well be elsewhere in the country. Very big story this, sharply on our radar.